3 times, the world almost ended. Welcome to House of Wowness.
The kind NATO every single year with barely a headline. Western Europe. An exhausted leadership in Moscow became convinced they were watching the opening moves of a real war. While NATO pushed paper, actual Soviet nuclear bombers were being prepared for a potential launch. No one went rogue. No single commander gave a reckless order. 2 massive military structures operated exactly as they were designed to, and in doing so, nearly started a nuclear exchange in time. By late 1983, the diplomatic temperature had dropped to freezing. The Reagan administration had spent the year leaning into aggressive at the Soviet Union. The deployment of American Pershing II missiles, like the one seen launching here, placed highly capable nuclear weapons in Western Europe. For Moscow, this meant a strike could reach their territory in under 10 minutes, drastically reducing your window to react. Soviet General Secretary Yuri Andropov, former head of the KGB, took the threat literally. Under his direction, the intense anxiety at the top of the Soviet they called it Operation Ryan, an acronym derived from the Russian phrase for nuclear missile attack. It was a standing directive for KGB and GRU stations abroad to actively hunt for any indication the United States and NATO were preparing a surprise first strike. Soviet analysts operated under strict orders to find evidence of an attack, far beyond simple observation. Institutional mandate essentially mathematically rigged the intelligence apparatus to interpret any realistic NATO activity. As we see this typical 1980s computer terminal setup, it represents what Able Archer 83 actually was post-exercise. It was a scheduled administrative test of NATO's communication procedures for escalating through the stages of a nuclear crisis, run mostly on paper and over secure radio waves. But the 1983 iteration included new variables. Planners introduced codes and brought in simulated participation from senior alliance political leaders to test how the highest levels of the chain of command would handle a crisis. While we see troops maneuvering in the field, the soldiers and officers executing these new communication protocols treated it strictly as routine training. They had no idea how their simulated changes in alert on the other side of the Iron Curtain. Soviet military monitoring stations across Eastern Europe immediately picked up on the novel codes and the sudden, highly realistic shifts in NATO's communication patterns. Drill, right as Operation Ryan had the entire Soviet hunting for signs of a first strike, created the exact conditions required for a severe action. NATO planners calmly pushed paper. Urgent reports flooded into the Lubyanka building in Moscow, the headquarters of Soviet units, and processed that influx of data. Scattered reports of radio codes and alert shifts feed into the central filter. The system does exactly what it was programmed to do. It aggregates routine exercise traffic and outputs a flashing red alert. When the system locks into a match-found state, the Soviet analysts reach their conclusion. The sudden shifts in NATO communications mirror precisely what a genuine build nuclear launch would look like. The intelligence assessment triggered a physical military response. Reports indicate that Soviet and Warsaw-Pact air forces were moved to heightened readiness, with nuclear-capable aircraft in East Germany and Poland readied for immediate action. This is the arc's most unusual. It features no individual hero. It is the story of an entire system nearly collapsing under the weight of its own suspicion. Subscribe for the rest of this run, and tell me in the comments, does a systemic failure like this scare you more or less than one that comes down to a single person? Neither side was acting irrationally. NATO planners were doing their job of running a drill. Soviet analysts were doing their assigned job of watching for an attack. 2 massive command structures functioned exactly as designed, yet nearly produced mutual destruction. Then the exercise simply ended. Schedule, NATO officers packed up their paperwork, reverted to standard communication codes, and went home, entirely oblivious to the panic they had just caused in Moscow. The West only learned about the danger because of the man seen here, Oleg Gordievsky, He was a senior KGB officer stationed at the Soviet embassy in London, who had been secretly working for British intelligence for years. In the aftermath of Able Archer, Gordievsky provided his British handlers with detailed internal debriefing at the highest levels of the Soviet military during the 10-day drill. When this intelligence reached the British government and the Reagan administration, it proved jarring. Western leadership suddenly realized their routine posturing and realistic training exercises were being interpreted as imminent acts of war. Gordievsky to launch if one had been ordered. Strictly informational, he simply provided the intelligence that showed Western leaders the invisible cliff they had just blindly walked along. This was the stark reality of 1983. Two heavily armed, highly suspicious bureaucratic systems pushed their countermeasures right to the very edge, with no human and catastrophe. The world survived Able Archer not because someone made a brave choice at the last second, but simply because the clock on the exercise ran out before the suspicion could boil over into a preemptive strike. We've spent 3 episodes exploring the man-made anxiety of the Cold War, but the universe has entirely different ways to threaten life on Earth. As we look at these flattened trees, we shift our focus that directly out of the sky. Hero this time. Just an entire system primed. We've covered 3 Cold War near misses in a row now, and honestly, we all need a breath. Next time, we go back a few decades and change registers completely. An asteroid, a forest, and 8 hours of Earth's rotation, standing between a devastating blast and a genuine catastrophe. That's day 118, the Tunguska event.